Hello, I'm Marian Bestfield. I'm a retired special education, and classroom teacher with give or take 20 years of experience. That approximately 25% of children experience one or more traumatic events by the time they're 16. So, understanding and embracing trauma informed teaching is crucial for connecting with and supporting every student in your classroom. We don't necessarily know the trauma they come to school with, and we may never know the trauma they come to school with, but that doesn't preclude that it is there. And so, if we teach in a manner that supports trauma, whether or not they've received any, then we are doing our best to support them in that trauma. So, as you probably already know, trauma does come in various forms, from car accidents to domestic violence, and affecting a student's sense of safety and stability. Therefore, creating a supportive environment helps students feel understood, which promotes the emotional and cognitive growth that they need. I remember one year in my own classroom, I knew of two students who were experiencing trauma and I was watching them closely. I had a third student who had generational trauma. And then what I didn't realize until about halfway into the year is that I was also supporting another student with trauma because it had not been brought to my attention in any way. And I'm not even sure that the parents understood that what their child had experienced trauma through no fault or choice of the family. It was an outside situation that occurred within their family. And so nobody had brought it to my attention. That's the whole point, is that we don't know when we're supporting a student with trauma. So as we develop these practices in our classroom, as with any other universal design for learning principle, we can be supporting all the children who need it, regardless of our knowledge of their needs. So this can the importance for this is because trauma can undermine learning, and that will cause behavioral challenges. And behavior can be anything from work refusal because they just can't do it because feel overwhelmed. However, with a trauma-informed approach, you can help your students to heal and improve their engagement and boosting your confidence as a teacher. And it's important because a lot of often as individuals, not just teachers. And I'm sure you've heard this and see this in your life. Well intentioned people can actually cause more damage. So it's important for us to be aware of what trauma informed teaching actually looks like. Being, of course, that you don't know which children have trauma always. And so, what I find, I sometimes found it overwhelming initially. And what I found over time, and I read a fantastic book by Dr. Bruce Perry, and he speaks about not that trauma informed practices is easy per se, but it's if we breathe and take a chill and just listen to the child, that's often what we can do because we're not meant to be counselors, we're not meant to be psychotherapists, we are teachers, and so we have them in our care. And so it's more about being available, and of course let's go into the characteristics. So you'll develop key traits if you're not already modeling them and demonstrating them, like empathy, compassion, adaptability, and of course, strong observational skills. These things are essential for creating a supportive learning environment. For example, the child that I didn't know that had the level of trauma that they had experienced, we had a school-wide rule, and one morning, the child was not following the school's expectations, and we had been told to speak to those children. So, having a relationship with this child, having experienced no problems prior to this with this child, I called the child quietly to my desk and smiled and said, "You must be doing this. You understand the school expectation on this." And total meltdown. Okay, now the observational skills are, I know this student. I know that this is not typical behavior. The empathy and compassion is, okay, so this isn't just I didn't get breakfast, not enough sleep last night. This is really atypical behavior for this child, and so I need to pull back. And this isn't about enforcing this school-wide expectation. This is about pulling back, adapting my approach, and then speaking to the parent and or the administrator. And So this is what we need with trauma-informed teaching. It's not recreating your entire role. It's about knowing when to flex and pause and understand. And I mean, I had strong classroom expectations. There was in no way, shape, or form this response from the student would be tolerated for typically, except for this wasn't typical. And I could see that it was more. And that's the whole point. Empathy, compassion, adaptability, strong observational skills. These skills and strategies are so important because there are three pillars that form the backbone of trauma-informed teaching that they align with. Because you want to create a safe learning environment, you want to build those trusting relationships, and then implement some trauma-sensitive practices or strategies, which I'll get into in a little bit. But in the previous example, you can see that although I called the child up about a school-wide expectation, that child needed to be safe, and that expectation, clearly she felt unsafe. And so as part of building that trusting relationship, my next choice indicated, okay, I trust you and I know you. Let's see where this is going. And I pulled back, calmed the child down, and then got more information, and it was resolved later on. And there was honestly some confusion about it. There was more that I didn't know. There was more that the parents didn't know. There was some responsibility taking that needed to be done by administration. And so, but all of that required empathy, compassion, adaptability, right? So that's the point there as far as those traits. It's that flexibility and understanding. So, and because of the relationship I'd developed with the child, knowing that this was atypical behavior. So some strategies that hopefully are prevalent throughout your classroom day, but are very effective here are things like positive reinforcement. So this is one of the strategies, is just celebrate small successes. The significance of the impact of this cannot be understated. By acknowledging even the little stuff, you will build confidence and motivation in the student or students, um, which is what they need during this time when they're feeling overwhelmed and like they just can't do anything. Overall, this will enhance the learning and boost the self-esteem of everyone in your classroom, and certainly the child who is really needing it now. And collaboration is key. You want to keep communication open with the colleagues, families, mental health professionals, whoever is involved in this scenario. And this is not about calling meetings all the time. Sometimes it's one example of collaboration, again, with a different student, um, was that I was at my door talking to the parent of one student who was experiencing trauma currently. And knowing my class was going about their morning routine because they did, and I was confident in that. So I could just take a moment with this parent to support this parent, see if I wasn't drilling them with questions, but I was just building relationship in case they had any notes that they wanted to drop. And in fact, what was really important that I offered that day was just saying, hey, if this student needs to go for a few days, their grades are fine. I wouldn't worry about that. And the parent confirmed that that's exactly what they felt. So that was just building that rapport and understanding and support. And as I turned around, the other child who had literally just experienced a trauma had arrived in class, back in class for the first time that day. And so what I needed to do in that moment to create a safe learning environment is to keep everybody else away as the parent got that child settled. So I just got on my mic, and because I built the trusting relationships and the kiddos knew what that child had experienced, I just said, okay, thank you everybody. Have you got your books out? How's everybody with the chairs? And I just got everybody going again into our morning routine. And that gave the parent and the child that everybody wanted to swamp and see if they're feeling good. That gave them some breathing room to get started. So it's that keeping the communication open, working with the families, knowing that they don't need you necessarily swooping in and being their psychotherapist at all. They just need you to be a safe, stable place. And I did find with the children that when they needed more than that from me, as soon as I made a safe place and they knew I was making a safe place, they came to me with their needs. And honestly, with the parents who had also been impacted by the trauma, of course, That made me a safe place for them, one less thing for them to worry about as we develop that relationship. So trauma-informed teaching enhances your students' well-being, obviously, and it will cultivate a positive classroom culture where your students, because the other students are seeing, they're often more aware of what's going on in that child's life than you are if they're close friends, and kids learn and hear from each other, and they're very protective of each other, and there's quite a few justice seekers in your classroom. And so they will see the stability, the safety, the protection that you're offering that child, and they will understand that that exists for them too, as long as you have an inclusive classroom where it exists for all of your students. And they will, if you've developed the connection, the connectivity, the safety, your students will be ready to learn. So, as I mentioned, this video is not going to teach you all the strategies for becoming a trauma-informed teacher or what to implement. It is to tell you that trauma-informed teaching is important. Trauma has an impact on students' learning. There's some basic principles that you can meet and to support your students. And if you want to learn more about implementing trauma-informed teaching practices, you could check out resources like the Child Trauma Toolkit for Teachers. And there's also a free resource that I offer. It's my classroom management checklist, which is not specifically designed for trauma-informed teaching, but the principles of those pillars of classroom management align with trauma-informed teaching practices. And so it's free. You might want to check that out. You will find the links in the description below. In summary, by embracing trauma-informed strategies, you can profoundly impact your students' emotional as well as their academic lives. And you can transform your classroom into a nurturing space for growth and discovery for your students. And you will bring a peace and an understanding to yourself as well, as you know they're nurturing those children in what could be the most difficult time of their life. So are you ready to take your classroom management to the next level? As I mentioned, my classroom management checklist, which is free, aligns well with trauma-informed teaching practices. So you can download this free gift to you to get started on a path to better trauma-informed practices. You can use the bit.ly link that you see on the screen, scan the QR code with your phone camera, or find the link in the comments below. Thanks for joining me, and I hope to see you soon. If you found this video helpful, you will see I've suggested more videos on the right of the screen. I would love it if you would help out and help me get out there to more teachers to support them. If you would give a thumbs up or subscribe to the channel, or do both, hit the notification bell, and that way you'll never miss an update. Thanks for joining me once again, and I hope to see you soon. Bye now.